Hi, welcome to the second round of energy. We're going through the PSLE revision, and this topic is on photosynthesis and respiration. We're going to be covering what photosynthesis is, and it's going to be shown right here in our planted tank. You have photosynthesis taking place now with the light on, and it's for organisms manufacturing their own food, green plants. In Greek, photo means light and synthesis, and when you put it together, it's photosynthesis begins when light, sunlight or artificial UV light, like this bulb over here, strikes the leaf of a plant, and this reaction can be summarized by the following equation: water plus carbon dioxide and sunlight and chlorophyll equals to sugars plus oxygen. The special cell structure called chloroplast, which is present in leaves, leaves a green pigment called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll interacts with sunlight to split the water present in plants into its basic components, hydrogen and oxygen. Carbon dioxide enters the leaves through openings known as stomata, found mostly on the underside of the leaves. During the gaseous exchange, the stomata would open and close, allowing gas to enter and leave the plant. Each stoma is enclosed by guard cells that control the opening and closing of the stomatal pore. The carbon dioxide that enters the leaves will combine with the stored energy in the chloroplast through a chemical reaction to produce sugars. The sugars are then transported through food-carrying tubes known as phloem from the leaves to other parts of the plant, such as the roots, stem, fruit. And some of the sugar is used immediately by the plant for its life process and to provide it with energy. Some are stored as starch, and some is built into a more complex structure like plant tissue or cellulose. Fortunately for us, plants often produce more food than they need. The extra food is stored in different parts of the plant, and we obtain energy directly by eating plant leaves, stems, roots, seed, and fruit. When plants stop carrying out photosynthesis in the absence of light, for example, when I turn off the light, what happens is, at night, the plant will break down the starch which has been stored into sugars to provide food for itself. Photosynthesis is the first step of the food chain which connects all living things. Every creature on earth depends on green plants to a certain degree. The oxygen that is released during the process of photosynthesis is essential for all living things. Forests have been called the lungs of the earth because animals inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. When they breathe, the plants take in carbon dioxide and give off oxygen, which then carry out photosynthesis. So that's a great cycle. And the roots absorb water and nutrients from the soil. However, the swollen roots of some plants are also used to store food. Carrots and sweet potatoes contain sugar and starch. Those are roots that you eat. Stems. Plant food can also be stored in stems. An example is the potato, which is a stem tuber with large amounts of starch stored in it. Another example is the sugarcane, which stores sugar in its stem. Food can also be stored in the leaves of the plant. Leaves of the cabbage, spinach, and iron store food mainly in the form of sugars. Food is also stored in the fruit of the plant and is known as sugars in mainly edible fruits, making them sweet and tasty. Bananas, grapes, durians, mangosteens are examples of such fruits that store sugars. Seeds. Let's move on to seeds now. Seeds such as groundnuts, soybean, maize, rice can store food too. Rice has a high starch content. Where does photosynthesis take place? Well, it converts light energy to chemical energy and stores it in sugars, and plants need light energy, carbon dioxide, and water to make sugars. The process of photosynthesis takes place in the chloroplast using chlorophyll. The green pigment involved in photosynthesis, and it takes place primarily in plant leaves and sometimes in stems. The part of a typical leaf include the upper and lower epidermis and mesophyll and vascular bundle of veins and the stomata. The upper and lower epidermal cells do not contain chloroplasts, thus photosynthesis does not occur there. They serve mainly as protection for the rest of the leaf. The stomata are tiny openings which are found mostly in the lower epidermis and are for gas exchange. They let carbon dioxide in and oxygen out. The lines spread over a leaf surface are called veins. Veins form a complex network of the leaf and transport water and nutrients to the leaves. Water goes up the root, stem, or the trunk into the veins of the leaves of the plant. Food is also transported from the leaves to the other parts of the plant through the veins. Veins are responsible for transporting water and nutrients to the leaves, like I mentioned earlier. And they are very crucial, just like your veins on your hands and your body and everything else, where it transports water, blood in this case, back into your heart to pump. An average healthy tree, did you know, could have about 2,000 leaves. During 60 years of its life, such a tree could grow and shed approximately 1,500 kg of leaves. These leaves return about 70% of the nutrients to the soil. Well, did you know that chlorophyll, that mushrooms do not have chlorophyll, so they cannot make their own food? And one of the key things about light is that different color lights are absorbed for synthesis to occur. Green light is reflected off, blue light is absorbed, red light is also absorbed. I'm going to be going through some adaptations of photosynthesis. As you know, in the morning, the leaves are usually standing upright. And in midday, they perk horizontally, that they may get burnt, so that they do not get burnt by the intense light of the midday sun. And in the evening, they're usually hung low, in showing that the sun would set on the west, and therefore that they would try and absorb as much light from the west as well. So it's very interesting how the leaves can shift their arrangements, also to receive the most amount of light. In this case, the light is continuously here, so the leaves don't really shift very much. But in cases of human beings like us, we can notice how people from other countries come to Singapore to work because the dollar is more valuable. Similarly in the US and in England and parts of Europe. The importance of photosynthesis, by which green plants use light energy, is a conversion, and it's virtually all life, because it's the basis for all life. And we notice that the energy comes mainly from the sun. The sun heats up the oceans, land and air, causes wind and ocean currents, evaporates water, forms clouds, and causes rain and snow. Plants on land and in water combine water and carbon dioxide in the presence of sunlight and makes glucose. They store the energy in the glucose molecules that they make with the help of energy. And the glucose is a type of sugar, a simple carbohydrate that is the fuel that powers the cell of plants and animals. The energy keeps moving and changing. When animals eat the plants, they use the energy that was stored in the plants to breathe, move, stay warm, and reproduce. We therefore have a cycle that we know about, and it's a food chain which we understand, which we all know. So we are going to be focusing now into the glucose and other sugars. Okay. The food chain. Primary producers. Green plants and certain types of bacteria and algae are primary producers. It is because they produce usable energy for the rest of the living organisms on Earth. They use energy from the sun to make sugar molecules such as sucrose, and glucose, and other organic compounds that other life forms can eat and burn for energy. In each of those sugar molecules, a bit of the sun's energy is stored in a form that we call chemical potential energy. Herbivores are plant eaters, and they have the ability to digest the plants they eat and release the energy stored in the plant cells for their own use. We can also call them primary consumers. Some examples of primary consumers are your deer, cow, elephant, rabbit, elk, zebra, most insects and birds that eat fruits and seeds. Carnivores, they are your meat eaters. Predators and scavengers fall into this group too. We can also refer to them as secondary consumers. They eat these animals that eat plants, and sometimes they also eat each other, kind of like the shark eating another fish, big fish that consumes primary producers, or like a wolf that eats a cat, that eats a rat. Alright. Omnivores. There are some animals that can eat both plants and other animals, and they are called omnivores. And as you know, bears are omnivores, so are turtles. Monkeys are omnivores too. They eat frogs, lizards, as well as fruit, vegetables, flowers, and squirrels. Squirrels are omnivores. They eat insects, moths, bird eggs, nestling egg birds, and also seeds, moths, squirrels, fruits, acorns, and nuts. And of course, the human being. Decomposers. Some organisms feed on dead plants or animals and break them down into simple substances that return to the environment. These organisms are called decomposers, and this group is made up mostly of bacteria and fungi. Without decomposers, there would be a lot of dead bodies lying around, and they get the energy from the cells of these dead plants or animals, and these organisms break down, and these simple structures are returned to the soil and can be used again by the plants. The energy transformation chain starts all over again, and we can know that it is a very good cycle of life. So remember, respiration, it takes place in all living things, and it's a process where energy is released from glucose or other organic substances to carry out life processes, and energy is required for growth, repair, movement, and other metabolic activities. All living cells must convert stored energy from food into energy needed by the cells for growth, reproduction, and to carry out cellular function. The process of cellular respiration converts glucose into energy inside a cell. Living things release the chemical potential energy in sugars for their use. The process occurs inside the cell of living things and requires oxygen. This process is called aerobic respiration. The oxygen is obtained from the surroundings, and cellular respiration takes place day and night in all living cells. All the energy that was stored in the sugars was then made during photosynthesis, is released during aerobic respiration. Some of the released energy is radiated from the organism as heat. The remainder energy is used to make a new chemical which can be broken down easily into the cells to release the energy. And not only is energy released from the sugars during aerobic respiration, they are also broken down into the constituents carbon dioxide and water. The difference between photosynthesis and respiration. The two types of course, absorbs oxygen, that's respiration. That's when I turn this light off and these plants start to respire, they start absorbing oxygen. And that's one of the reasons why you don't put a plant in a room that you're sleeping in, because it will start respiring and kind of compete with you on the oxygen in the room, especially if it's an air-conditioned room. It occurs in all organisms, and its chemical potential energy is released from fuels, occurs all the time, and causes a loss of dry mass. For photosynthesis, it occurs in green plants, releases oxygen, uses carbon dioxide and water as raw materials, and has light energy that is converted and stored as chemical potential energy, needs light to start the process, causes an increase in dry mass. And that's one of the reasons why you don't need to water these plants, because it's in water. And just for your information, this one here was planted out there in my walkway for a couple of months, and it did really well too. So it's quite adaptable in water and out in the soil. So there's some experiment you can try if you have plants out in your garden that you want to put into your tank and see if it grows. Yes, you can. That's amazing. Just make sure you have a deep enough soil bed so that you can plant the roots into the soil. Looking back at our point that we want to talk about now, glucose is only partially broken down, and lactic acid is produced in aerobic respiration. In this type of respiration, a lot less energy is produced, and most energy, 70%, is lost in the form of heat. When aerobic respiration occurs in yeast, it's called fermentation. That's how you get your yogurt and your beers and alcohol. It's produced instead of lactic acid in fermentation, and this reaction is used in brewing of alcoholic drinks, and therefore you get aerobic versus anaerobic respiration. Let us take a look at the difference. Aerobic respiration. Much energy is released for aerobic respiration. Water is an end product. Glucose is completely broken down and it is dependent on oxygen. Anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration. Little energy is released. Lactic acid and alcohol are the end products. Glucose is not completely broken down and is independent of oxygen. Respiration in organisms. Let's look at organisms now. Respiration refers to the overall process by which oxygen is taken from the air and transported to the cells for the breakdown of glucose, while carbon dioxide and water are the products of the breakdown are returned to the environment. In a single cell organism, gaseous exchange occurs directly between the cell and the environment through the cell membrane. In plants, gaseous exchange with the environment occur in the stomata, found mostly in the underside of the leaf. I'm going to show you a little bit of what it looks like. You can see that's how your cell looks like. Now, the other point is animal respiration. In some animals, gas diffusion takes place through a moist surface membrane, such as in the flatworm, through the thin body wall, such as the earthworm, through air ducts and tracheals, such as in insects, and or through specialized tracheal gills, such as in aquatic insect larvae. The fish gills. The blood vessels are exposed directly to the external or aquatic environment, and the gaseous exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs between the surrounding water and the blood within the vessels. And the blood carries the gas in and from the tissue. So you can see here, in this little picture here, how the fish works. It's quite interesting. And water goes through the gills, and in the other vertebrates, including humans, the gaseous exchange takes place in the lungs. In complex animals, where the cells of internal organs are distant from the external environment, respiratory systems facilitate the passage of gas to and from the internal tissues. Human respiratory system, as you all know, you have your lungs, and this is how it looks like, as you can see. Yes. So you've got the nasal cavity, the epiglottis, the pharynx, the larynx, the trachea, the bronchus, and the left lung, and the diaphragm. Alright. Now, the respiratory system includes the respiratory airways leading into the lungs and the lungs themselves. The inhaled air passes through the nasal cavity or the oral cavity, pharynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and alveoli, and that's called breathing. It is a mechanical procedure in which air reaches the lungs during inhalation, and the muscular action lowers the diaphragm and raises the ribs, and atmospheric pressure forces air into the enlarged chest cavity. In exhalation, the muscles relax and air is expelled. The combined rhythmic action takes place about 12 to 16 times per minute when the body is at rest. The rate of breathing is controlled mainly by a respiratory center in the brainstem that responds to changes in the hydrogen ion level and the carbon dioxide level in the blood, as well as the other factors such as stress, temperature changes, and motor activities. Have you ever been very afraid and started breathing heavily? Similar, that's what happens when your brain stem triggers you to breathe fast. It finds that you have very little oxygen in your blood and high carbon dioxide content, hence heavy panting. Therefore, information corner, we're going to be looking at how amplified view of lungs are like. Just for your information, there are many blood capillaries around each alveolus. Oxygen in the alveolus cross the thin walls of the alveolus and get into the blood inside the capillaries. Carbon dioxide moves from the capillaries into the alveolus to be exhaled from the lungs, and this movement of gases is called gaseous exchange. The oxygenated blood flows into our heart and is pumped to the rest of the body, and carbon dioxide produced during respiration is carried by the blood in the veins to the heart. The carbon dioxide is exchanged for oxygen at the lungs, and carbon dioxide is then removed from the body during exhalation, maintaining oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in air. During respiration, all living things take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide. If oxygen in an atmosphere is not replaced, it will be very soon used up. However, during photosynthesis, plants release oxygen, there we are, and take in carbon dioxide in the presence of sunlight. We're going to be looking at, oh, this is a wonderful overview. I'm just going to let you have a look at this. This shows you everything that we talked about, and yes, beautiful. So always remember, and now we're going to practice some questions. So which of the following are transported by a network of tubes found in the plant? Well, sunlight, minerals, water, food. Which of the four? Well, the answer is B, C, and D. Minerals, water, and food. Obviously, sunlight is not transported by the tubes found in the plant, whereas the xylem and phloem make up the transport systems in the plant, and they carry water and minerals from the roots up to the other parts of the plant. Which of the following word equations show the process of respiration? Again, the respiration is the breakdown of sugars by oxygen to release energy, and energy is used by the organism for growth, reproduction, movement, and other daily activities, and in this process, carbon dioxide and water are their byproducts. Now, we're going to be looking at this simple experiment here. If you look at this, you can see after 10 hours, he noticed bubbles forming in the water and rising to the top of the inverted test tube. Identify the gas produced in the main process taking place. Well, obviously, the gas produced is oxygen because it's during the day and you get sun, and photosynthesis is taking place. Hence, the rate of photosynthesis is higher than the rate of respiration during the time of the sunlight hours, and oxygen is produced, thus collected in the test tube. During a science experiment, Robert's teacher asked him to study the following diagram: sun, eucalypt, termite, magpie. Robert's teacher gave him a piece of paper with 4 conclusions based on the diagram and asked him to tick all the statements that he thinks are correct. He ticks the following, which are incorrect. So these are interesting trick questions. It talks about how magpie gets its energy directly from the sun, which is wrong, and because the magpie eats termites only, and an omnivore eats both plant and animal, and based on the diagram, the magpie is a carnivore, not an omnivore, thus option B is incorrect. Okay, there we are. That was the question that I asked you earlier. Okay, study the diagram below. This is the diagram. Have a look. Okay. Which of the following represents structures A, B, and C correctly? So structure A, as you can see, is the stoma, and structure B is the chlorophyll, and structure A is the vein. So, because the structure A is stoma because gas exchange takes place via the small openings found on the underside of the leaves. Thus, the water could be in either option 1 or B. And structure B is chlorophyll because it absorbs light energy from the sun. And thus, option 4 is the correct option. And structure C is the leaf vein where water and food can move in and out of the leaf. And the vein consists of xylem and phloem, which are tubes that transport water and food in plants. Okay. As you know, carbon dioxide is released during respiration at night, and when there is no light, photosynthesis does not take place, then carbon dioxide is produced by plants during respiration. Chlorophyll is the green pigment in leaves which absorb light for photosynthesis and can be found under the red pigment. Light rays can be absorbed by the chlorophyll and photosynthesis can be carried out. So a lot of times we need to remember about chlorophyll, sunlight, and how they're all needed to carry out photosynthesis. And what is the outcome? It's carbon dioxide or water and oxygen or sugars respectively. Since the process of photosynthesis, the raw material for the reaction will be water and carbon dioxide, and thus why must be sugars? That's another question here. And right about there we can see a lot of these questions coming up again. And when the plant was in the storeroom, it received no light. Alright, well, we thank you for watching and hope you like my little planted aquarium. And we're going to stock it up a little bit more with plants later. But for now, that's it. This is Christian and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.